It was one of those mornings where the air smelled like freedom, fresh-cut grass, warm coffee, and the soft hum of sprinklers from neighbors' yards. I stood on my porch, mug in hand, staring proudly at the riot of colors blooming in my front yard. Tulips, petunias, and daisies painted the lawn like an artist's palette. I'd spent the entire spring tending to them, pulling weeds with blistered hands, watering under the sticky Georgia sun, and coaxing life out of the soil like some backyard miracle worker. For the first time since the divorce, my little house felt alive. These flowers weren't just plants. They were proof that I could create something beautiful out of a life that had fallen apart. Every petal was a victory. I didn't hear the HOA president pull up, but I heard the engine cut and the car door slam. The sound was sharp, like a judge's gavel. My stomach dropped before I even saw her, Patricia Klein. 45 going on 50, always in crisp khakis and a polo shirt tucked so tight you could bounce a quarter off her stomach. Her bob haircut didn't move, not even in the wind. She was flanked by two board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, clipboards in hand. "Morning, Nate," she said, adjusting her sunglasses like the sun had personally offended her. "We need to talk about your yard." I plastered on a smile, masking the irritation bubbling under my skin. "Morning, Patricia. What about it? Looks good, right?" Her lips pinched into a line so thin it could have sliced glass. "It's colorful." "Thank you," I said, with genuine pride. That was kind of the point. "Unfortunately," she continued, ignoring my attempt at humor, "our HOA guidelines specify that all front lawns must maintain a uniform aesthetic. That means green grass, minimal ornamentation, and approved plant species only. No excessive landscaping." Her gaze swept over the flowers like they were graffiti on the Mona Lisa. "And what you've done here is, well, outside compliance." I laughed, thinking this was some early April Fool's joke, but her expression didn't budge. "You're kidding, right? These are flowers, Patricia. Flowers." She clicked her pen. "And they're not on the approved list. We've had complaints." "Complaints?" I repeated, my voice cracking like dry wood. "From who?" "People allergic to happiness." One of the clipboard guys coughed, clearly fighting a smile, but Patricia shot him a look that could turn milk sour. "This isn't a debate, Nate. It's a rule. And as president, I have to enforce it." "What happens if I don't?" I asked, crossing my arms. She smiled then, a cold, tight smile that told me everything I needed to know about the kind of woman Patricia was. "You'll be fined. $100 a day until the flowers are removed and your yard is restored to compliance." The words slammed into me like a freight train. $100 a day? I could barely keep up with mortgage and child support, let alone bleed money because some control freak didn't like daisies. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice low now, dangerous. "These flowers are in my yard. On my property." Patricia's sunglasses flashed in the sunlight like a villain's calling card. "You agreed to the HOA rules when you bought this house. If you have an issue, you can attend the next meeting. Until then, remove the flowers. Or pay the fine." And just like that, she turned and strutted back to her car, like some suburban sheriff laying down the law. The clipboard guys followed, heads low. I stood there, mug trembling in my hand, the bitter coffee suddenly tasting like ashes. By the time their SUV rolled out of sight, the pride I'd felt minutes ago was gone, replaced by a boiling rage that made my hands shake. HOA rules. Uniform aesthetic. Approved plant species. What kind of dystopian hell's cape had I moved into? I yanked my phone out and called Sarah, my sister, my voice of reason. "Hey, you sound like you swallowed a hornet," she said as soon as she picked up. "What's wrong?" "They're fining me," I said, pacing the length of my porch like a caged tiger. "The HOA is fining me $100 a day because of my flowers." There was a pause. "Your flowers? Like, the ones you've been bragging about nonstop for the past 2 months?" "Those exact ones." Another pause, then a laugh. "You're kidding. I wish." Patricia Klein rolled up here with her little entourage, like she was leading a SWAT raid on narcotics. Said I'm violating some rule about, what was it? Uniform aesthetics. Like I'm supposed to live in a Stepford neighborhood with identical lawns and zero personality. "Well," Sarah said carefully, "you did sign the HOA agreement." "Don't you start," I snapped. "I didn't sign away my right to plant flowers." "You kind of did, Nate." I groaned, dragging a hand down my face. "So what? I just roll over and let them bully me." "I didn't say that," she said. "But maybe don't start a war with the HOA." You'll lose. Those words stuck like splinters, but my pride screamed louder than her warning. Lose. To Patricia Klein? The woman who lived for laminated rulebooks and neighborhood gossip? Not a chance in hell. I hung up and stared at my yard. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, oblivious to the storm brewing over them. They didn't deserve this. They were innocent. They were beautiful. And now, they were a target. Something inside me hardened then, like concrete setting in my chest. Patricia thought she could scare me into submission, into ripping out the one thing that made this place feel like home. She thought wrong. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to fight back. And not just fight. I was going to make sure Patricia Klein and her little HOA army regretted ever coming after me. The war for Maplewood Lane had begun. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop glowing in the dark, searching everything I could about HOA rules, loopholes, and, more importantly, stories of people who'd fought back and won. There were forums, Facebook groups, entire subreddits dedicated to HOA horror stories. Some ended in disaster. Some were legendary. And somewhere between reading about a guy who turned his house neon pink out of spite and a woman who planted 500 garden gnomes on her lawn, an idea began to take shape in my mind. Something bold. Something unforgettable. If Patricia wanted war, I'd give her a battlefield she'd never forget. But first, I needed to learn the rules. Because to break them spectacularly, I had to understand them perfectly. I closed the laptop, staring out the window at my moonlit flowers. Their colors dulled in the darkness, but to me, they were brighter than ever, a symbol of defiance. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Couldn't sleep. Too many ideas running wild in my head like kids hopped up on soda. I poured myself a strong cup of coffee, opened my laptop again, and dove deeper into the HOA rabbit hole. Every forum post I read fueled my fire. The more I learned, the more ridiculous it all seemed. These people actually thought they could dictate what color your shutters were, what brand of mulch you used, even how tall your grass could grow, as if life wasn't already complicated enough without HOA tyrants breathing down your neck. But then I found something interesting. A little gem buried in the HOA bylaws that Patricia probably thought no one would ever bother reading. The HOA only had authority over visible landscaping elements within the designated conformity zone. In plain English, they could regulate what was in my front yard, but they couldn't touch the backyard. At all. A grin spread across my face. Oh, Patricia, you poor, rigid soul. You'd just given me an opening the size of Texas. By noon, I'd already made a trip to Lowe's. And not a casual trip either. I went full scorched earth mode. Pallets of soil stacked in the back of my truck. Dozens of potted plants, shrubs, and ornamental grasses. Bags of gravel, rolls of black tarp, edging stones. And for the piece de resistance? A giant, gaudy garden gnome holding a welcome sign and wearing sunglasses. I named him Carl. The cashier gave me a look like, "You building a jungle, dude?" I just smiled and said, something like that. When I got home, I didn't even go inside. I threw on work gloves and got to it. 8 hours straight, fueled by spite and Gatorade, tearing up every inch of my backyard and transforming it into something Patricia Klein would lose sleep over. By sunset, the once plain patch of grass had become a chaotic masterpiece. Exotic flowers in neon shades. Oversized ornamental grasses swaying like wild hair. A gravel pathway winding through clusters of potted palms and ferns. Bird feeders dangling from poles. Solar lights lining the path like a miniature runway. And right at the center, a massive koi pond I'd ordered online weeks ago, but never installed because it seemed like too much work. Now, it felt like destiny. By the time I was done, my backyard looked less like suburban Georgia and more like a tropical resort designed by someone on psychedelics. It was wild. It was loud. And best of all, it was completely legal. The next day, Patricia struck. I was on my porch sipping coffee when her SUV rolled up like a tank. She got out, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tight they practically disappeared. 2 other board members flanked her again, though this time they looked even more miserable than before. "Morning," I said cheerfully. "Lovely day, isn't it?" "Nate," Patricia began, voice stiff as frozen steel. "I see the flowers are still here." "Sure are." I grinned. "Haven't they brightened up the street?" "They are a violation of HOA guidelines," she snapped. "You are now accruing fines at $100 per day." Currently, she checked her clipboard. $300. I whistled low. Wow, that's steep. You know what else is steep? The price of fish food for koi. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I held up my phone and pulled up a photo I'd taken last night. My backyard in all its chaotic glory, koi pond sparkling under solar lights. I turned the screen toward her. Pretty cool, huh? Built it myself. Spent all day on it. Her face went pale, then red, then something in between. She sputtered. That's not allowed. Sure it is, I said, feigning innocence. HOA Bylaws Section 4.3, backyard landscaping is outside the conformity zone. I checked. Twice. Want me to send you the PDF? Patricia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. One of the board members actually coughed to hide a laugh. You're being deliberately antagonistic, she hissed. Me? No way, I said, sipping my coffee like I had all the time in the world. Just exercising my rights as a homeowner. For a second, I thought she might actually explode. Steam coming out of her ears, head spinning like a cartoon character. But instead, she turned sharply on her heel and stormed back to her SUV without another word. The clipboard guys scrambled to follow. I watched them go, a smile tugging at my lips. Round 1. Mine. But here's the thing about people like Patricia, they don't lose gracefully. And I knew she'd be back, meaner than before. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Certified, of course. The kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Dear Mr. Nathan Jacobs, it began in perfect legalese. This letter serves as formal notification of your continued violation of HOA landscaping guidelines. Failure to comply will result in escalation, including but not limited to increased fines, property liens, and potential legal action. At the bottom, Patricia's signature, neat and smug. A property lien? For flowers? My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She was done playing nice. She wanted to break me. That night, I sat in my backyard sanctuary, tiki torches flickering, the soft burble of the koi pond soothing my rage. I thought about giving in, about ripping out the flowers, paying the damn fines, and ending this war before it ruined me. But then I pictured Patricia's face, the smirk, the superiority, and something inside me snapped. If she wanted a war, I'd give her an apocalypse. The next day, I took it up a notch. If the front yard was the battlefield, I was going scorched earth. I started planning something so big, so obnoxious, it would make Patricia lose her ever-loving mind. No more just flowers. No, I was thinking themes, decorations, art installations. Hell, maybe even a live element or two. Something she couldn't find me for without breaking her own rules in the process. I called Sarah that night. You sound way too happy, she said. What did you do? Nothing yet, I said, grinning into the phone. But it's coming. Oh, it's coming. You're scaring me. You'll love it, I promised. Everybody will, except Patricia. I didn't sleep much after that. I was too busy drawing plans, scouring Craigslist, making phone calls. If Patricia thought my flowers were a problem, she hadn't seen anything yet. Because this wasn't just about flowers anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about every neighbor who'd ever been bullied by an HOA president drunk on power. I was going to make a statement so loud it would echo through the cul-de-sac for years. And Patricia Klein? She'd be the one left picking up the pieces. By the time dawn broke 3 days later, my front yard no longer looked like a yard. It looked like a movement. First came the sod removal. I rented a machine and stripped every inch of that prim, regulation-approved grass Patricia loved so much. Gone. In its place, a sprawling, layered rock garden that looked like something out of a desert survival documentary, except I'd added color. Pops of crimson sedum, bursts of purple salvia, clusters of bright yellow coreopsis that practically glowed under the morning sun. Then came the ornaments. Dozens of them. Some tasteful, most not. I hit every thrift shop, every yard sale within a 20-mile radius, and bought anything that screamed lawn decor. The tackier, the better. Pink flamingos. Got 'em. Metal sunflowers taller than me. Yup. A 6-foot windmill painted in rainbow stripes. Absolutely. And then, of course, there was Carl the gnome, now standing proudly on a miniature stone pedestal in the center of it all, wearing a pair of dollar store sunglasses and holding a tiny American flag. But the crown jewel, the thing that would make Patricia choke on her non-fat soy latte, was parked right on the corner of my property, a full-size, fiberglass cow I'd found on Craigslist for $200. I spent all night painting it bright purple with gold spots. Why? Because why the hell not? By the time I was done, my lawn looked like Disney World collided with a garage sale in the middle of a botanical garden. It was glorious. It was hideous. It was everything. And it was perfectly within the rules. See, here's the kicker. Patricia's own beloved HOA bylaws had a loophole big enough to drive a tractor through. Section 3.8, under Decorative Elements and Installations, stated that yard ornaments were allowed as long as they were non-permanent and non-structural, which meant as long as nothing was cemented into the ground, she couldn't touch it. And guess what? Every single piece in my nightmare masterpiece could be picked up and moved in 10 minutes flat. The first neighbor to see it was Mrs. Talbot from across the street. Sweet old lady, probably 70, with a walker and a soft spot for gossip. I heard her wheezing laugh before I even turned around. "Lord have mercy, Nate," she cackled, gripping her walker like she'd fall over otherwise. "What in God's name is this?" "Art installation," I said with a grin. Title: Freedom of Expression in Suburbia. She laughed so hard I thought she might pass out. "Patricia's gonna have a stroke." "Good," I said. By noon, half the neighborhood had wandered by to gawk. Some took pictures. Some offered high fives. A few whispered warnings. "You're poking the bear, Nate. She's gonna make your life hell." But I didn't care. I'd been living under Patricia's thumb for too long. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. And then, the Queen arrived. Her SUV screeched to a stop like she was responding to an Amber Alert. Patricia climbed out, face redder than a stop sign, clipboard clutched in her talons. 2 board members followed, looking like men walking to their own funerals. "What the hell is this?" she hissed, spinning in a slow circle to take in the spectacle. "What have you done?" "Morning, Patricia," I said cheerfully. "Like the new look?" This is vandalism," she spat. "On my own property." I tilted my head. "Doesn't sound right. You are in gross violation of HOA regulations." "Nope." I cut in, waving a printed copy of the bylaws in her face. Section 3.8. Non-permanent decorative elements permitted without prior approval. I checked. Twice. She snatched the paper from my hand and scanned it so fast I thought the ink might catch fire. Her jaw clenched. Her knuckles whitened. "Everything here," I continued, voice calm as a summer breeze, "is non-permanent. You could pick it all up and toss it in a truck if you wanted. No concrete. No structural modifications. Just a proud display of creativity and individuality. You know, American values." The look on her face was pure hatred. If looks could kill, I'd have been buried under my own gnome army by now. "You're making a mockery of this neighborhood," she said through gritted teeth. "No," I said, stepping closer so she could see the fire in my eyes. "You did that the day you decided flowers were a crime." The neighbors were watching now. Phones out. Recording. Some laughing. Some cheering. Patricia noticed, and her rage flared even brighter, but she couldn't do a damn thing. "Enjoy your day, Patricia," I said, turning away before she could reply. "I've got more flamingos to set up." And I did. 20 more, to be exact. That night, I sat in my lawn chair with a beer in hand, tiki torches blazing around my chaotic paradise. The air buzzed with laughter from the neighbors who'd gathered to see the Patricia protest, as someone had dubbed it. Kids ran around playing tag between the ornaments. Even Mr. Walker, the grumpy guy who never smiled, cracked a grin when he saw the purple cow. For the first time since moving here, the neighborhood felt alive, united. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Patricia wasn't the type to retreat quietly. She'd go nuclear before admitting defeat. And if she wanted war, I was ready to take this to the next level. Because tomorrow was the day the media got involved. I'd already sent photos to a local news station with a cheeky caption, "HOA finds homeowner for flowers, so he turns his yard into this." And if there's one thing the internet loves, it's a David versus Goliath story with a side of absurdity. By this time tomorrow, Patricia wouldn't just be fighting me. She'd be fighting the entire internet. And right on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. The local reporter had replied, "This is amazing. Can we come by tomorrow for an interview?" I smiled, the kind of smile that says, checkmate. Tomorrow, the whole world would see Patricia Klein for what she really was. And me? I'd be the guy who turned a petty HOA fine into a suburban legend. By sunrise, my house looked like the set of a reality TV show. Cars lined the street. Neighbors hovered on lawns like spectators at a prize fight. And parked in my driveway, a van with the local news logo splashed across the side. The reporter, a young guy with perfectly styled hair and that practiced, concerned journalist look, shook my hand like I'd just saved a puppy from a burning building. "So, Mr. Jacobs," he began as the camera guy adjusted his lens, "tell us why you decided to turn your yard into this." I looked straight into the camera, the purple cow gleaming in the background, Carl the gnome throwing shade behind my shoulder. "Well," I said, letting my voice carry across the street, "I planted flowers to make my home feel alive." The HOA said no. They fined me $100 a day. So I thought, if individuality is a crime, then I'm going to be the most wanted man on Maplewood Lane. The reporter grinned. "And this is the result?" "Freedom of expression," I said, dead serious. "Because nobody should be bullied into living in a cookie-cutter box." The camera guy gave me a thumbs up like, nailed it. Patricia was nowhere in sight during the interview. Not at first, but as soon as the segment wrapped, I heard it, the unmistakable squeal of her SUV tires. She pulled up so fast she nearly took out my mailbox. When she climbed out, she didn't look human anymore. She looked like wrath in a pantsuit. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, storming toward me, clipboard raised like a weapon. "You called the media? You're humiliating this entire neighborhood." The reporter immediately flipped the mic back on. "Ma'am, could we get a statement from you?" "No," she barked, jabbing a finger in my face. "You think this is funny? You think you can turn this into a circus? I'll sue you for defamation." Careful," I said calmly, aware of the cameras rolling. "You're on live TV." She froze like I'd slapped her. Slowly, her gaze darted to the camera, then to the growing crowd of neighbors, phones out, recording every second. "This man is in violation of community standards," she said finally, forcing a smile so tight it looked painful. "We just want harmony in our neighborhood." "Harmony," I cut in, "by fining me for flowers?" The crowd murmured. Someone yelled, "Let the man have his flowers." Another shouted, "Down with the HOA." Cheers erupted. Phones went higher. Patricia's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. For the first time, I saw it, the crack in her armor. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She was losing control. The reporter closed with a dramatic line about the battle for individuality in suburbia, then packed up and left, promising the segment would air that evening. But for Patricia, the damage was done. That night, the story blew up. Not just locally, nationally. The video hit Facebook, then Reddit, then TikTok. Headlines popped up everywhere. HOA president fines man for flowers. He responds by building this. Purple cow and gnome army spark HOA war in Georgia suburb. Comments flooded in by the thousands. People called me a hero, a legend, a modern-day Robin Hood with garden tools. Memes of Carl the gnome went viral. Someone even photoshopped me onto the cover of Time with the caption, "The man who fought the HOA and won." And then, because the internet loves a good villain, Patricia's name leaked. Within hours, her inbox was flooded. Her phone, blowing up. Her pristine HOA Facebook page, nuked with angry comments. The next morning, she resigned. Effective immediately. Just like that, the queen had fallen. A week later, I sat on my porch watching a moving truck back into her driveway. Patricia Klein, once the ruler of Maplewood Lane, was leaving, her perfect little world shattered. I should have felt smug, victorious, and I did a little, but mostly, I felt relieved. The war was over. Sarah came by with coffee and nearly tripped over a flamingo. "You've got CNN calling you a folk hero," she said, handing me a cup. "How does it feel?" I took a sip, looking out at my chaotic masterpiece of a yard. "Honestly, exhausting, but worth it." She smiled. "So what now? You keeping the purple cow?" "Maybe for a while," I said, grinning. "He's part of history now." Carl the gnome stood in his spot, sunglasses crooked, flag waving gently in the breeze. A reminder of how far I'd gone, and how sweet it felt to win. A few weeks later, things quieted down. The HOA elected a new president, a reasonable guy named Dave who promised, and I quote, "to chill the hell out." He even laughed when I asked if I could plant more flowers. "Plant a jungle if you want," he said. "Just don't start another war." I promised I wouldn't. But as I walked through my yard, past the flamingos, the rainbow windmill, and the purple cow, I couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes the only way to fight tyranny is with chaos. Beautiful, glorious chaos. And as for Patricia, last I heard, she moved to a different HOA in another state. Poor souls. But if she tries this again, well, let's just say I hope her next neighbor owns a chainsaw and a sense of humor.